And we've already got concentration camps in the United States.
Concentration camps?
We're actually doing that.
I'm from Poland. You know what does it mean for me, concentration camp?
If America is becoming fascist or is fascist, sigh. That's the direction they're headed in. How likely is it that we see escalation into open conflict with NATO and possible use of nuclear weapons before Putin is overthrown? ICE, it's like the Stasi of the Trump administration. Really, we've got Rasputins wandering around in the United States. And the Republican Party confirmed these people. The United States, at home and abroad, is no longer following the rule of law. If you look at wars, those with the most competent alliance system tend to win. Hello, Vladimir. But if you, whoops, sorry about that.
BLIK has become a partner of Bison Fellowship, a program for Central Europe's brightest young scientific talent.
I have received so much mails from our...
No, not males, male.
Mail.
No plural, singular. It's a collective noun, singular.
Okay, so I have received so much mail from our viewers, and here we have US mailbox, so you can choose whatever you want and try to answer.
Uh-huh. Okay. Oh yeah, you weren't kidding. All right, so each one I got to open up.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from at Dead Channel 13464. I don't know. I always put my name on things. You know, when I'm on the internet, you know who's talking, but let me get all this other stuff. Anyway, I'm an older generation. If America is becoming fascist or is fascist, sigh. How will that impact U.S. citizens and other citizens' relationships with the United States, and what will happen to the United States in the coming decade? Well, that's an excellent question that Americans are terribly worried about, because clearly there are Americans who are not using the term fascist, but that's the direction they're headed in. And we've already got concentration camps in the United States.
Concentration camps?
Yeah, no, concentration camp means to concentrate people in a place, and you lock them up. And then in the case of the United States, here we're rich. They're apparently being held in deplorable conditions. This is what's happening. There's a big sweep for predominantly, it's apparently Hispanic population. And you can read all about this. And just in the last couple of days, someone's been shot to death in Maine, and I missed another one where people are just, you look at the guy in the car and go, oh, must be Hispanic, somewhere south of the border, and being treated absolutely brutally. And then there's a refusal to hand over the records to do proper investigations of all of this. It's appalling what is going on. And then there are a lot of Americans who are resisting this. A lot of people who are demonstrating outside of these facilities. There are many wonderful lawyers who are suing, etc. But basically in the United States, I've never been partisan before. I mean, I'm a historian, and I can admire things that Republican President Eisenhower did or Democratic President Truman did, and look at them both, positive, negatives of both, until we got to where we are now. So it's really serious. The United States, at home and abroad, is no longer following the rule of law. And that is the way continental empires do it, right? It's all about, they tend to have dictators who just set all the rules. And what it yields incredible power for the dictator as long as they survive. Many of them, they rule for a few decades, and then they may have very grisly deaths. It destroys wealth. And then the businessmen who support fascists, like some people will say, well, the fascist businessmen who supported Hitler, it's okay for them, because Farber existed before the war, and then Farber, the company, exists after the war. Well, excuse me, if you look at all the estates that whatever that family had, and family members who died in the war, and for the lucky ones who were in Eastern Europe, East Germany afterwards, no, it did not work out well for them.
I'm from Poland. You know what does it mean for me, concentration camp?
No,
place created mostly to kill someone.
Yeah, that's correct. But I think the technical definition is about concentrating a population in a place without a proper legal recourses and things. And we're actually doing that in the United States. And I get it. By all means, get rid of illegal immigrants. I got that.
How would ordinary Americans even know it happened?
Social media accounts. It's all over the press what's going on. And like when ICE, which is our immigration enforcement, this special, I don't know, it's like the Stasi of the Trump administration, where in Minnesota they were running around pulling people out of cars, and then they did 2 public executions of Alex Priddy and Renee Good. And you can see this because people were filming it, right, with their cameras and loaded it up. So the ICE agents say one thing, and you look at the filming and you know something quite different happened, that Alex Priddy is on the ground and they've got him there, and then they start pumping bullets into him.
Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming parts of our Q&A series with Sarah Paine.
Has any democracy come back from the brink before?
Yeah, sure. How about Germany? I mean, things come and go. We're still holding Hungary, right? You had Orban for a number of years. We'll see how long it lasts. This isn't over. These are early days. You're going to have a sense of where things are going with the midterm elections, of whether American voters think this is okay and vote all the Republicans in. Because at this point, again, I never used to be partisan, but I'm looking at what the Republican Party has done is so whatever Donald Trump wants, they do. And so they confirmed people who are known to be incompetent, like Pete Hegseth. You could look at the Senate debates and things about him. He's historically incompetent. He's Major Pete Hegseth. He knows nothing. He's worried about whether people have got beards or not. And I guess he's like Sesame Street level, where what things are the same, what things are different. He can identify who women and who blacks are and then fire them. I mean, that's where he's at. And then what is it for in the running the Federal Food and Drug Administration? We've got Kennedy, who I think I've told you this, that yeah, he's a recovered heroin addict or something. He has no scientific background, and then his first cousin, Caroline Kennedy, who has a perfectly respectable career, is talking about him putting small animals in a blender. I mean, these are not people. Really, we've got Rasputins wandering around in the United States, and the Republican Party confirmed these people. They could have said no, and with the war in Iran, they could have said no, and they've gone yes, yes, yes. So they own this. This is not just Donald Trump. This is the entire Republican Party. In the past, there was disagreements within both parties about, like in the Watergate, when Richard Nixon is tapping the Democratic headquarters and doing things, it's the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. They were going to convict him. He was on the verge of being impeached and then convicted, and they would have done it. So that's the Republican Party then, not the Republican Party now. It's serious. Oh, no one knows the answer to all of this. And if the United States goes full, to me, fascists and continentalists, they go together. That if you're looking at the world, I'm going to dominate everybody and I'm going to beat everybody up. This is right. We've now got is America alone, right? It's the United States does whatever, and it doesn't historically. It doesn't work out well for the countries that try this because other people gang up on them. By John Nutter. Is Putin more like a czar or more like a Soviet dictator? Well, I wonder what the difference is. Czars ruled by have hereditary descent. I mean, Putin, we don't even know who his mistress is and who his kids are, right? Doesn't he have one? Well, we know about the 2 daughters who are legitimate by his ex-wife, right? We know about them, and he's made them billionaires. But then we know he's got the sporting, his little gymnast, whoever she was or whatever, who, isn't she parked in Switzerland? And he's got whoever's there. But then he's got the compound, I think, of other kids who are the local kids. And apparently he's hired like tutors from all over world to make sure they learn English, except those tutors don't realize they know too much about the Putin family. I mean, it's like, there's no exit strategy for you on this.
By the way, it doesn't matter.
No, but if Putin, he's got no hereditary setup. The Romanov dynasties had succession covered, right? And it was just known and everyone went along with it, except when they didn't. But then they assassinated someone in the family and put someone else in and pretended it was like, just ignore what happened to dad. We've got the son here. Soviet dictators, what was it? You start with...
Does Putin himself know which one he is?
Well, so he's another person that I haven't telephoned lately. And so, you know, what is my knowledge of Putin? Soviet dictators, think about them. Stalin has enormous power because he's the hero who won World War II, right? Enormous power. Khrushchev has much less power. And then Brezhnev is ruling with his sclerotic buddies. There's a set of them. And they're doing, I know he's the biggest one up there. And then the last guys were just dying in office, right? And Andropov, Chernenko, they last like a year, a little year and better. So he's definitely going back to the Soviet model of incompetently running his economy. And what was nice about the czars is, for all their faults, they valued their connections with Western Europe, and they admired, I think, Western monarchies. And I think Nicholas II would be telling people, look, we're 200 years behind, or so we can't do things the way you do. But there was definitely, at the elite level, of saying, we're part of the team over here, we're part of these monarchies.
He would like to be as a European king? Or...
Yeah, their idea is not to overthrow all the monarchies of Europe. That's not it. Whereas the communists have this really antagonistic view about Europe, is we're going to do a communist revolution, we're going to get rid of all of you people. So that's why they're much more threatening to Europe. And also, the Romanovs, they're first cousins of everybody. Although it's dysfunctional first cousins, because then they're attacking each other. But they're, so is Putin more like one or the other? No, I think it's rather all three are similar, right? Mm-hmm. Look at the similarities. One guy in power. The Soviets were more institutionalized. Their succession wasn't great, but at least they had politburos and permanent candidates. And so you get a sense of the choices fall within this group. And then that nasty group was known for executing each other, but putting in someone else. And Putin, you look and go, I have no idea on who's coming next. And it's for my understanding, he feels more like a mafia state. Let's go back to Weber. It's like going back to patrimonial states where it's just one person making all the decisions, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, right?
Right, because think about it. Let's go back to institutions. If we have institutions, we're saying, hey, you want to be a doctor? You just can't go out there with a knife and start opening people up. You have to go through a medical education. Well, A, you have to get into the medical school. B, you have to graduate. C, you have to get a medical license. D, you have to do an internship. There are a lot of things. And if there's some problem with your surgeries, we have boards to look into it, and we'll take away your medical license. And it goes on in profession after profession after profession. And this is why we can rely on each other. When you go into a doctor's office, it's not 100%, but it's better than 0%. And yeah, there are bad things happen, but compared to the patrimonial state, it's by far the more efficient thing of having institutions and having these bureaucratic processes. So Putin's not doing well right now. He's thrown away every good card you can imagine.
He's going worse and worse and worse, I think.
He's toast. He's toast. You've probably followed it more than I have. So what is it? He's lost over 100 ships, these medium-sized ones that, if you look at Russia, it has a lousy road system. So it depends on trains and rivers. That's how you get things around. Well, he's already lost 100 of these ships in the last week. Mm-hmm. Because he's trying to supply Crimea with oil because the Ukrainians have cut everything off. So now Russia's it's a petrostate and it's got gas lines everywhere. How incompetent. And then his buddies are the people who own all of these refineries that Ukraine is picking them all off. And just destroying Russian wealth. For what? For Ukraine. I mean, this is this continentalist attitude. It's like Putin decides he needs Donbass, he needs Crimea. For what? You need a legal system so Russians can compound wealth at home, so that Russians can develop their economy and live decent lives.
Do you believe of this scenario that Putin would, annex all Ukraine and use Ukrainian to attack Europe?
Sure, that's what continentalists all do. Yeah, the problem with continentalists is if this is your security paradigm, so you're constantly moving outwards, it's negative sum because you're fighting over it, so things are getting destroyed. So whatever the defeated party had before, there's less now because you've wrecked it. But even so, you take away whatever the good stuff is and you send it to Moscow or wherever. So for the kleptocrats at the top, maybe they're personally making more money. But as if that's what you're doing, but the rest of the world, hey, you lived in Poland. Think about it. At the end of the Cold War, Poland reformed its legal system. Poland reformed its banking system. Poland reformed its political system. It means that individual Poles make their individual decisions of what businesses they want to start or don't want to start, what schools they want to aspire to get into, work hard to do it, and think of all the economic growth. It's incredible. And then compare Ukraine until recently, before the last 20 years. Ukraine did not make all these reforms. Ukraine and Poland, at the end of the Cold War, very similar standards of living. And then Poland makes all these reforms. Ukraine doesn't, because it's got too many oligarchs to get through. And look at the massive difference in standard of living. It's incredible. So the fall of the institutions, it's the way to live in prosperous societies. All right, now what? This is by Stanislav, I don't know how to pronounce it, Jirok, 3400. Can Putin lose the war in Ukraine and stay in power? No, I don't think so, but who knows? In other words, how likely is it that we see escalation?
Can Putin, right?
Can Putin?
Can Putin?
Yeah, I think probably not personally, but I mean, I don't know. After that, he's got real troubles. In other words, how likely is it that we see escalation into open conflict with NATO and possible use of nuclear weapons before Putin is overthrown?
Who would even tell Putin that he's lost?
Well, here's the story. And I had one idea before, which is thinking nukes could be in our future. But then I believe in changing one's mind. I was listening to someone else analyze, and their take was, hey, it may be Putin's last day, and so he was willing to use nukes. But in order for you to actually have the nuke deployed and actually use it, you have to have a whole bunch of other people who also think that now is my last day. And so if I'm going back to like imperial Japan, with this incredible Bushido sense of nationalism, I can picture people in those days, if they'd had nukes at the end using them, I can picture that. I can picture Mao at certain periods, because and when we got all the Red Guards and everybody who are just really intense, I can picture under certain circumstances where that would happen. But I look at Russia, this totally transactional place, and then I don't picture it actually. I think this other person's argument's better than mine, which is that Putin may want to say, let's do the nuclear thing, but the other oligarchs may be, no, because we're not interested, and we're not necessarily dead if this is the last day. You might be, but not necessarily us.
What does losing even look like for Russia?
I don't know. Well, there's also a question, this is way beyond my expertise. I presume it's the fear of them putting a tactical nuke on Kyiv or something. I don't know. You want to commit a massive war crime? And then wondering what the retaliation... Oh, there's another piece of it is, as far as one can surmise, India and China have said, don't even think about it. Just don't even think about it. Because the problem after that is that everyone's going to get their own nukes. And that means anyone who has a nuke now is it devalues their position, right? And more people have nuclear weapons. And this one is from, I don't know how to pronounce them, Brunos.3273. With global warming opening new Arctic shipping lanes, the U.S. should be strengthening its relationships with Canada and Northern European countries to counter Russia. Yet its government keeps threatening the sovereignty of those very countries. Is there any way they can still work together with the U.S. in the future and feel secure about their independence? Currently, the current administration in the United States is following a continentalist security paradigm, which is the more territory I take, somehow I think it makes me better off. In the modern day, you wind up fighting with people for those sorts of things. And that winds up being negative sum because whatever you're fighting for gets damaged in the fight. So what the United States is currently doing, or has already done, is blown its alliance system. I mean, and then the Iran war just totally fixes it because ruining the alliance system because it's such a monumental blunder that's hurting everyone's economies. So, as Carney of Canada has said, the middle powers need to get together and organize, which is what they're doing, and it's been happening at a breathtaking rate, very rapidly organizing. So the United States has thrown away its privileged position within the Western alliance system that was earned at great cost by US GIs in World War II. We have tossed that. It is a pivotal error, so that's a nice concept of what you, after you make those errors, whatever the choices you have afterwards are less good than they were before. So it's rather like Brexit. If Britain ever decides to go back to the European Union, it will go back on less good terms than it had before. The same thing with the United States. And then we did the second pivotal error, which would be Operation Epic Blunder in Iran. So the story is if the United States is making epic blunders, the rest of the world needs to organize together and protect themselves that way.
Can you stay
Anyone, you
allies with someone you no longer trust?
Well, that's the problem, is the World War II generation had earned enormous trust, right? And then the system thereafter was win-win, right? We were all prospering together. And then the United States did the nuclear umbrella, and Europeans had all sorts of strategic locations for US basing, right? The United States is mad right now that Spain isn't interested in sharing those strategic bases with the United States because of the nutty things we're doing in Iran. But it will take decades for the United States to earn back the trust. As a colleague once told me with the first Trump administration saying, well, the Europeans will get over one Trump administration because that'll be a mistake, but they'll never forgive us if there are two of them. And that's what we've got.
What's about the Arctic? Who actually owns the Arctic?
Well, by international law, I don't know the details. There's a potential Arctic route, but if you think about sea routes, there's nobody who lives up there. Right, Russia has some things at Murmansk, but there's hardly anybody up there. So you're not servicing anything. You want to do a quick cut through, but as if you've noticed with shipping over the years, if certain areas become dangerous, the shipping just goes the long way around because the big thing in shipping is really ship size. That's what makes things cheap. And then small ships are much more expensive. And if you do an Arctic route where Russia's going to be doing tolls, who wants to do that? You're just going to keep the existing shipping routes. And then it's great that China wants to dominate up there too. I don't know how that works because unless they own Russia, they will not dominate an Arctic route in the way what the word domination means. All right. This is from Dan McGuire at YT. Okay, Dan McGuire, someone who actually puts his name there. All right. As China expands its naval capabilities and the U.S. seeks to maintain maritime dominance, that's going well in the Strait of Hormuz, are we entering a period comparable to the naval rivalry between Britain and Germany before World War I, or are nuclear weapons and economic independence fundamentally changing the pattern? Okay.
Strong question, right?
Well, there are a lot of pieces to it. All right, let's look at maritime dominance, what does that mean? Maritime dominance. In order to be the one, maritime dominance means you can have more likelihood that your ships get to the ports you want to send them to than the other person's ships can get to the ports where they want to send them to. That would be what I would call maritime dominance. To do that, you need not only a certain number of ships, but you need allies, right? I mean, if you look at basing, Britain had colonies. So if you look at Britain in the 1920s, it's just, well, for long before then, it's just got basing all over the world, and that is essential in order to refit your ships and do whatever is necessary. There's another piece that goes with that for maritime things. You have to be able to get your ships out in wartime, because you can't get them out in wartime. In peacetime, everyone gets their ships out, right? If we're not fighting, everybody sends their ships wherever they want to, and that's great. And this is the problem with wars. In wartime, narrow seas close down. Narrow seas with people who are fighting on them close down. Narrow seas, if it's all controlled by one person or one alliance system, don't. But if the narrow sea has got different players on it, they close down. Merchant ships just plain can't go anywhere. So look at Germany in both world wars. It has no merchant marine going anywhere, right? They can't get out. And Germany can't even get surface ships out, really. I mean, it tries Battle of Jutland in World War I, but it can't, in order to reliably get your ships out, if you're on a narrow sea, you can't. So that's why Germany in the world wars, the things that are actually useful to it are the submarines, the U-boats, because they use those for commerce raiding. And there's a whole question of whether they shouldn't have spent lots more money on those things rather than the surface ships. Okay, let's look at China. Or Russia or Eurasia. They're all surrounded by narrow seas. And up north for Russia, there's nothing up there. From your industrial centers, can you get things out? And China, if it has enemies, it can learn a lesson from the Austro-Hungarian Navy. And I'll tell you this story. So I've just edited a book, and it's just been published on fleets and being. Like, what do you get from owning a fleet? And one of the best chapters is about the Austro-Hungarian Navy. And you know about, probably you've seen the movie The Sound of Music, right? And there's this guy named, I don't know if in Poland, did it ever make it there? And it's got the Van Trapp family singers, and there's Captain Van Trapp. Well, he could do more than sing. He was a submarine captain. And so if you look at a map, Austro-Hungary faces Italy. It's an enemy in World War I. Well, the Austro-Hungarian Navy means that Italy cannot invade Austria-Hungary over that sea, because they will never get their invasion force. But it even gets better, because Captain Von Trapp and his little submarine buddies can get out onto the Mediterranean. So that means that Britain, which has to get the Suez Canal, has to convoy everything. And it loses a certain number of ships. So here's what you can learn from the Austro-Hungarians. I got it, they lost World War I. But if China's neighbors, like Vietnam and the Philippines, you buy enough shore artillery, mines, and you have your own subs, there's no way China's merchant traffic will ever get out in wartime. And its surface traffic will also have trouble in wartime.
What do you think? Did anyone in 1914 actually see it coming?
No, everyone thought it was going to be a nice little short regional war. World War I is another term, parallel wars. So each country had its territorial objectives and what they wanted. It was all about expanding empires, often at each other's expense, and often even within an alliance system. So you get broadly two alliances, but they don't agree on who their primary enemy is, and they don't agree on what territories they want to take, like what's the objective. Whereas in World War II, everyone agrees primary enemy is Germany, and you need to get rid of Germany, and that's the primary theater of that war. This is for the Allies, but in World War I, that's not the case, and it's why the war never ends, because there's never a peace settlement that's good enough for everybody on your side, let alone the other side. And yet no one can leave the alliance, because if you do try to stay alone, you'll definitely lose. It's a mess. But anyway, on this, what was this naval stuff? Yeah, China is inherently, by geography, is constrained. It has nothing to do with other people. And therefore, it's great it's built this big surface fleet. But in wartime, if the neighbors don't like China, it won't get it out in wartime.
Does trade really stop wars?
No, wasn't that supposed to be the assumption?
Or have
that,
we just been lucky so far?
No, that was the assumption before World War I, is that there would be no big war because we all trade with each other. Or was it after World War I? I guess it was after World War I. We're all trade partners. No one's going to go for a big war. But, you know, these continentalist dictators, that's not where they live, right? It's not about the interest of everybody. It's about, I want to take over and I want to beat other people up. Isn't there also not an issue of letting psychopaths get to high places?
Psychopaths.
Well, I don't know. Or people who don't have any tender feelings about their fellow human beings. I don't think Xi Jinping has evidenced any tender feelings towards anybody. If you form a big alliance, if China actually got along with all of those people, if it treated them decently, then yeah, if all those people are friendly, then of course you can get your navy out. And so this is Europe. If Europeans stick together, Germany will absolutely get its surface fleet and everything out nowadays, because the Baltic, with the exception of the extreme easternmost point, well, Kaliningrad, everything going west can get out, right? So it has to do with the friends you have. Alliances are really important. And if you look at wars, those with the most competent alliance system tend to win. Hello, Vladimir. All right, Putin.
Putin.
Yeah, no, you know, it's the two Vladimirs going at it. All right, moving right along. At Holden_Fella. How do you feel about the idea that the Mongol Empire experienced a hostile takeover and rebranding into Muscovy? No, that's incorrect. With the Russian Empire inheriting its political and economic models, military doctrine, and ultimate goals. I get where this is coming from. When the Mongols came in, Muscovy already existed, and they became the tax collectors of the Mongols, right? So they're collecting taxes and delivering up, and that was the Mongol business model. The Mongols were absolutely vicious.
Vicious.
Yeah, they were. When they came into China, they're the Yuan dynasty. Oh, the number of people who were killed were unbelievable. They massacred their way to power. And they were only around, for China, it's a short time, 100 years, but it must have been one hell of 100 years. And what was it? Vernadsky, who's a very brilliant historian of Russia, died in the last century sometime. But anyway, he's a 20th century historian, and that was his thesis, or one of them, is that that the Mongols left enduring traces. And one of them, I haven't read Vernadsky since I was a graduate student, but one of them is this extractive. You were asking about extractive things. So if you're a tax collector, you're extracting things. And some would argue, some would disagree, that this is what Russians do. And it goes back to the Mongols. People would disagree, but this is an interpretation. So what you're doing is shaking people down for money, right? And then if you do that, you concentrate the money in St. Petersburg or Moscow, whatever your capital is, so that area becomes rich, and then you farm out the tax collection to someone else. And that is what the Romanovs did. They would conquer places like, oh, well, you can talk about Crimea. What is her name? Who is Putin's finance minister? What is her name? Navalina? What's her name? The finance minister under Putin, who's been keeping his economy afloat. She is from a Crimean Tatar family. So she must be she must be descended from the people who were interested in cooperating with Romanovs.
Is Russia still basically run like, you know, a steppe empire?
A steppe empire? No, well, I don't know the details on the Mongols of exactly what they did, but there was a lot more movement associated with them, right? They're really, and then they set up what are called in Russian history different hordes, this pejorative term for different parts of the Mongol Empire. So I don't actually know the detail of Mongols.
I thought that Russia never grow out of it.
Well, actually, all of us are influenced by where we came from, things that go way back in the past, and it's hard to isolate where these things come from. But I'm telling you that probably one of the big ones probably is this extractive mentality of you're making money, I get a percentage, right? So that's what taxes are. But this is the Russian business model, right? You're a young person, you got a business that's doing well, and then you got one of these silovniki, or someone comes to your house and says, I want you to pay me a monthly whatever, which is a mafia shakedown. And you could argue that this goes back in history forever. Or you could make a different argument saying, no, it's not continuous. The Mongols are in the, 13th century? That is, I know mostly about 19th, 20th century history, but I'm giving you a little I know about it.
What's going on the world that we are living in a democracy crisis?
I don't know the answer. I think one thing is we've lost the legacy media. This is the legacy media, are all those paper newspapers. And you used to be like your town would have a paper newspaper, your state, and there would be many of them. And then there was something in the United States called Craigslist. And Craigslist is an advertising platform where you want to, I don't know, sell your lawnmower, you put it on Craigslist. And once that came into being, that's where it just took away the advertising for all the little local newspapers, because that's what had financed them. So you no longer have local people doing local stories, right? And some of those local stories would be important, so they would get up to the statewide, and then they go national. All that's gone. And then it has this effect where in the past there used to be so many foreign correspondents for all of many major newspapers. They're all gone. And national. So what we call news in the United States, most of it is opinions. Like, you're asking me my opinions on stuff. Oh, great. Or predictions. You're asking me my predictions. Oh, great. What is the time-consuming thing and the valuable thing for newspapers is to have them collect all kinds of information, right? And don't give me your opinion about it. Don't predict based off of it. Just lay it out and say, this is what it is. And it takes a lot of time, right? To interview people, because people are lying to you and trying to figure it all out. Well, this is one huge problem. A second huge problem is you're talking about the social media, where in the past, newspapers, you just couldn't lie incessantly. It caught up with you. I mean, the lying that goes on in social media. So lying, and some of it's lying and some of it's misinformation, right? There's misinformation, which is, I'm telling you something is wrong. It's not because I believe it's wrong. I believe it's true. I just happen to be wrong, right? So we have all these people who are ignorant of vaccines, telling people all this nonsense about not getting vaccinated for things. And there's all of that going on. And then we have disinformation, and social media allows foreign powers to get in there and then anonymously, like, I've got all these questions. I don't actually know who any of these people are. They don't have their name to anything, right?
Any names, any surnames, right?
There's nothing here.
There's nothing here.
Right. No, and no one has, well, these are just questions, perfectly innocent. But when people are providing these answers, it's anonymous and there's no consequences. Oh, what's the latest? So I'm on YouTube. The latest ad is some idiot saying that Israel has no dementia, and that there's some biblical remedy. So go read your Bible because Israel has no dementia. That would be news to Israeli hospitals, I guarantee you. So this is an absolute, it's absolutely incorrect, and it's a very popular ad that's all over YouTube. This didn't used to go on to the extent that it goes on now. There are no consequences. There are no consequences for lying. And this is why you, in theory, have, there are reasons for having, in order to get your broadcasting license, there should be some minimal level of, you just can't spew things that are demonstrably untrue. But that's what's going on in the social media. And then another problem with social media is people get into their silos. They're people who think the way they do, and they just hear the same thing over and over again. And it used to be, there was a fair and balanced requirement. I can't remember which president got rid of it, whether it was Reagan or Clinton, but they got rid of it. Fair and balanced meant you had to provide both sides, and no one's providing both sides. And then I suspect we got other people weaponizing the social media to influence elections and things. That's very hard to prove. weapon. Yeah, they're using the Soviet Union back in the day to discredit the West. It would try to get articles put in the media. And the one I know about is in the Korean War, they were trying to say that we were using biological weapons in the Korean War. Nonsense. It's rather that they had no medicines and were incompetent. And so there are all kinds of diseases going on. And also China was subject to sanctions, and so it couldn't get basic drugs in. And so a lot of people are dying. But the way they would get these stories to circulate is you would put the story, in those days it was Africa, because like the social media today, then in Africa, no one's paying too much attention to how accurate the story is. So if the Soviets were lucky and the story got into some African newspapers, because they had client states in Africa, then if the European or US media picked up, then you were off and rolling. Well, now you just go straight into YouTube or whatever it is, into TikTok, and your meme is there. And then people are spreading it everywhere. And no one's figured out how to deal with this. And in fact, the US social media companies don't want any control over it. And Europe has said, yes, there are going to be controls over it.
US tried to control TikTok, right?
Well, isn't that China controls TikTok? That's the problem with TikTok. It's Chinese. So I don't know the details of all this, but I do know that Europe has just had enough of the United States and is going to try to develop its own set of these platforms. And what is it? Haven't the French rolled out their own search engine that the EU is now going to use? Isn't it like Quants or something? The French have a search engine.
You've never heard about it.
Yeah, I think you can check it, but they're sick of Google and things. So, and they're also, Europeans are also sick of our credit card systems, MasterCard and Visa, and Europe is going to be developing its own because they've had enough of our tech billionaires trying to tell Europe what to do on privacy issues and influencing social media. So which isn't helpful for the tech billionaires. They needed to be doing having more accurate content that they're spewing.
BLIK has become a partner of Bison Fellowship, a program for Central Europe's brightest young scientific talent.